everyone, I'm Robina.
And I'm Layla.
Welcome back to our channel, Nutrition Unpacked,
where we try diets so you don't have to. But today, we're not trying a diet. For the first time, I think, since
2023.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about the new villain on the block.
Inflammation.
I think it's become a catch-all term to describe any negative ailment.
I'm inflamed, you're inflamed, we're all inflamed. According to the internet, we all have inflammation.
Let's talk about what inflammation actually is. Inflammation, believe it or not, is a natural and necessary part of our immune system. So anytime that you're faced with like an injury or infection of some sort, your body does naturally trigger a whole cascade of biological processes to try to combat that assailant. So what this could feel like on the outside is maybe redness, swelling, bruising, maybe pain, even heat. All of this is happening as a way to kind of get you back to a healed and recovered homeostatic state of health.
So if you've ever rolled your ankle or stubbed your toe or had a pink eye or had, I don't know, what's the other thing?
Sort of bacterial infection, viral infection, paper cuts.
That's inflammation. We have all had it probably many, many times in our life. And our body does this not because
it hates us, it is trying to make us sick.
It is trying to make us better. That through that inflammation process, it's trying to clear out either if it's an infection or some kind of foreign body that's embedded into you. Your body's in there doing its thing, fighting things off, getting the bad stuff out.
All the things that we just mentioned kind of fall under what's called acute inflammation. This is in contrast to chronic inflammation, which actually is more of a problem. So chronic inflammation is when some of that fight response is still happening, even when there might not be an overt dangerous thing present. So this is what we see in conditions like asthma, rheumatoid arthritis, Alzheimer's, even diabetes and cardiovascular disease.
There is more and more research that's coming out on the role of inflammation in the development of non-communicable diseases and how that affects our health as a population. So I think that this is another case of people seeing like a couple studies and are like, oh, inflammation is related to bad things, therefore inflammation is related to every bad thing.
This is like permeated through the social media and TikTok space, and we're seeing a lot of recommendations being thrown out specifically about what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat, or when you should eat, or how you should eat. I'm gonna be honest here, we were gonna react to a whole bunch of TikToks, but then we came across one that actually like encapsulated pretty much some of the main recommendations we've seen like across the board. So I think we're just gonna react to that one that has like what, eight recommendations?
Yes, 8 recommendations on how you can fight inflammation. And you know, we want to be clear here, diet does play a big role in your body's inflammatory responses. The evidence that's out there is still building up, and science is a process. Science is a process, and I think for this kind of process, we're kind of in the early days. However, people on TikTok will have you thinking otherwise. They have it down. This specific girl, who's my new internet arch nemesis, has 8 things for you to do. Bing, bang, boom, we're done. 8 signs that you are experiencing inflammation.
Pretty much anything bad. If you can't sleep, if you're tired, your hair is falling out, if your weight is changing, that could be a sign of inflammation.
Your bloating,
skin issues,
brain fog, hey.
Constipation or diarrhea too.
Yeah, you must be inflamed. I must be inflamed. I'm tired.
Yeah, you haven't been sleeping well.
I know, I haven't been sleeping well. Gonna be just stress of life. This is kind of consistent of a lot of the claims that we're seeing on the internet about inflammation. People really fearmonger you and be like, do you have this very common symptom of just like living as a human being? Oh, you must be inflamed. A lot of the things that are on here may or may not be signs of inflammation. Fatigue, sleeping problems, that can be caused from a myriad of things. Things like skin issues can be caused like a myriad of things. If you do have something like acne, for example, yeah, that is an inflammatory condition. Inflammation is not something to be underplayed, but a lot of these things are just kind of like general things that happen for a whole bunch of reasons. But if you are concerned you have a chronic inflammation problem, that is a serious issue. Go to your doctor. Do not listen to Natalia Azad Wellness. Go to your doctor, please.
I think from a like trying to go viral on TikTok perspective, I think it's really smart to include like so many of these things.
Everyone has these things.
Literally every single person could identify with at least one of these problems.
100%.
So it's very much like, oh my God, is this my answer to the changes in weight that I've been seeing? Is this the answer to my constipation or the fact that I've been tired or I haven't been sleeping well? It's very enticing to be like, oh my gosh, this could help me, therefore I'm going to share. It's going to help me, it's going to help my sister, it's going to help my friend, I'm going to share this with everyone. I mean, I don't know if this was necessarily malicious in intent.
I'm ascribing malicious intent to Natalia, and we'll see later as to why.
So what should we do?
What should we do?
How can we get you back to sleeping well?
Natalia's 8 ways that you can combat inflammation.
She's had research studies behind her to really drive home the point, add credibility. The first thing, no surprises, you gotta avoid gluten. Gluten is that thing that's just doing all the things that we don't want in our body.
It's making us fat, it's making us tired, it's making us grumpy probably.
According to every single nutritionist, gluten, the devil. The devil. So she shows her first little study up, and I went on because I have Google Scholar too.
That's not what it
That's
says.
not what it says. It says for people who have celiac or non-celiac gluten sensitivity, they become inflamed after eating gluten. Which, surprise, if you have a disease that causes you to be inflamed after eating gluten,
then you become inflamed after eating gluten. If you are not celiac or have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, not a concern.
Not a concern. She then used another very rigorous study on our friends' mice. And basically these mice that were eating mouse chow every single day, they have some mice that were eating these mouse chow every single day, and then they added some gluten to some of them, and in a certain type of their intestinal cell, they did see some gluten. She made the claim that, therefore, gluten leads to inflammation, which is not supported in the evidence whatsoever at all. One of the best ways that we can look at this is looking at the foods that are associated or not associated with inflammation. And when we look at gluten-containing foods, typically grains, we actually do find that some gluten-containing foods are associated with inflammation. But it doesn't seem like the gluten is the issue. It seems as the processing of the food. So processed grains are shown to be pro-inflammatory, but whole grains, including whole gluten-containing grains, actually are anti-inflammatory. If you do not have celiac disease or non-celiac gluten sensitivity, gluten is not inflammatory.
Like for people that are allergic to peanuts, when they have peanuts, they have an allergic reaction.
And therefore we all should be eating peanuts because peanuts are inflammatory. That's actually a very good example. Yeah, because peanuts are inflammatory for people who are allergic to peanuts. Gluten is inflammatory for people who have inflammatory conditions caused by gluten.
Yes.
But that's not most people. 1% of the population has celiac disease, and around in the US, 6% or so of people have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, so that's like not most people.
The good thing is, if you do suspect that you might have either of those conditions, there is testing available. So I would say speaking to a doctor to get that process started to figure out if that's the case for you would be a good path forward. Next recommendation is eating fruits and vegetables slightly cooked. You know what, there's actually a lot of truth to this. A lot of plant foods have been shown to have anti-inflammatory effects. Either they're fiber, antioxidants, other polyphenols, or flavonoids. This part, there is a lot of truth to it.
Yes.
Specifically the part about it being slightly cooked. She did put in brackets, to help with digestion. It wasn't clear to us whether she meant purely, yes, maybe cooking it slightly would be helpful for digestion, because that part is true, because, processing foods at higher temperatures means you're helping with breaking things down. So if you do have a more sensitive gut, that could be helpful, and maybe not experiencing things like bloating or gas or whatever. But I don't know if she was then saying that bloating and gas and stuff is inflammation.
She did say that earlier in the video though.
She did say that earlier. But yeah, slightly cooking vegetables, if you do have a sensitive gut, could possibly be helpful with mitigating some of those symptoms.
We'll give her 1 point for that, because eating fruits and vegetables and dietary patterns that are rich in fruits and vegetables are shown to be anti-inflammatory.
Recommendation number 3, remove processed foods. This actually is also true. We do find that diets that are higher in ultra-processed foods do seem to increase markers of inflammation. I think the question mark here is this a direct causal relationship? Because we also know that diets higher in ultra-processed foods can lead to excess caloric intake, which can lead to weight gain. Excess adipose tissue can lead to inflammation. Like if you were in an energy balance while still eating a lot of processed foods, would we necessarily see the same?
We'll give her another point. Because it has been shown that ultra-processed foods are a little bit pro-inflammatory. We don't know the mechanisms, and there definitely is a lot more research that needs to be done in this space.
Recommendation number 4, consume quote-unquote high quality meat, fish, and poultry. And the paper that she had put behind was essentially talking about the fact that grass-fed beef tends to have higher omega-3 content compared to conventionally grown beef. We do also know that omega-3 rich diets can be anti-inflammatory in nature. So I don't know if there's kind of leaps and bounds being taken at this point.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the paper doesn't specifically say that swapping out regular beef with grass-fed beef would have an anti-inflammatory effect.
Typically, when we look at the literature, red meat is associated with pro-inflammatory effects. We have no evidence to say that grass-fed beef helps with inflammation, and if anything, we have evidence to show that red meat in general is pro-inflammatory.
That being said, if we jump ahead a couple of recommendations, she does encourage people to eat more omega-3 rich foods. So that's another point, I would say.
She has a point for that, for sure.
In the North American context especially, we do find that people aren't getting enough omega-3 rich foods because they tend to be mostly found in a lot of fatty fish, salmon, herring,
mackerel, sardines, anchovies,
and also some nuts and seeds like flax seeds, chia seeds, and walnuts.
This is the case where she may have confounded, and I think a lot of people do this, is that omega-3s are helpful, but then we also don't just eat single nutrients. We eat full food. So when we're looking at something like red meat, when we look at research on the full food of red meat, it is detrimental for inflammation. Just because a certain type of red meat has a little bit more omega-3 in it may mean it's not as bad, but we just don't really have the evidence to say so. So to start recommending something that we know generally is not associated with good health outcomes, a little irresponsible in my book.
Okay, let's go back to the one that we skipped over, which was eat when you're hungry. And she cited an article that was all about binge eating disorder.
Literally the whole article is about binge eating disorder and how it's, stress and binge eating disorder and obesity are all kind of linked together.
Yeah, I don't know if she was just saying that the solution to binge eating disorder and obesity is just listen to your body.
That's also literally not in the...
I don't know if that's what she's trying to say, which is also kind of just a lack of understanding of the eating disorder. I don't
Also, not once in that paper did they talk about inflammation. And this is where I was like, this girl, she's not even reading the abstracts. As far as I could find, there's not really any evidence that talks about things like intuitive eating and inflammation, or eating when you're hungry and inflammation. If anyone knows of anything, let me know. And perhaps if you're less stressed about eating, you have less stress in your body, which leads to less reactive oxidative species, which leads to less inflammation. Maybe it's something like that.
Yeah, but she's not saying
no, this was a
stress.
This was me really trying to give her the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
No, she just made this up.
Let's keep that trend going. Mm-hmm. Recommendation number 7, drink herbal tea in the morning, specifically.
And to back this up, she found a great article about green tea. And you know what's not green tea? Herbal tea. There actually is some evidence that some of the antioxidant compounds and the polyphenols that are in there and the phytochemicals that are in there can be beneficial for inflammation. Green tea is associated with positive health outcomes. It's great. We love green tea. Herbal tea, I don't know where that came from, because that's just a lot. That's a lot of different things. She just made that up.
Okay, and then her final recommendation was to stop eating 3 hours before bed. And then interestingly, she cited a paper that was not even about inflammation, and if anything, was kind of pro-eating at night.
You always hear people, don't eat at nighttime, it's going to cause issues. And I think that she's using that kind of like old wives' tale and then putting that into her story about inflammation.
Even a lot of the fear around eating late at night, maybe again like some weird game of telephone with observations and research in the area, just the foods that people tend to eat late at night could possibly lead to some of the symptoms that they talk about, including maybe not sleeping well, maybe weight gain, maybe just eating a lot more ultra-processed foods that perhaps could lead to an increase in inflammatory markers. But I don't think it's purely the timing of the act of eating that's the problem. If anything, this paper did find that if you were eating a snack that was modest in calories and higher in protein, that actually possibly could be helpful in certain populations.
For a long time, we talked about how eating at night could be bad, but actually it's probably good if you eat the right things. She clearly did not read the abstract even for that.
And it was not about inflammation at all.
No. The word inflammation is in the paper once, and it says that we need more studies to see the effect of eating at night for athletes or active populations on inflammation, but it was more like in like a positive sense, like it might be helpful because it helps their body recover better.
But it was about meal timing, I guess.
Okay.
So
I'm not giving her any points for that. I'm not giving her any points for that.
I feel like this could actually be a negative because it was like the opposite of what she had meant, right?
So what was she at? 3 points out of 8?
Was she only at 3?
Wait, what is she?
So
fruit, vegetables,
ultra-processed,
processed
omega-3. Those were the 3 that she got right.
Mm-hmm.
So -1
Minus
for
1.
the opposite.
Yeah. I feel like my TA skills are coming back in the little rubric.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
2 out of 8.
2 of 8, 25%. Which is embarrassing for her because no, I'm gonna say it's embarrassing for her. She puts on everything. Master of Nutrition Science. I don't believe in cyberbullying, but this girl,
Ooh.
I would never bully anyone, just in case anyone in the college is watching, any admissions people are watching. I would never bully anyone, but I do think that it's important to be rigorous when doing health communication, and she is not, and it bothers me because she's using a title that seems very compelling. It's like, oh, a Master of Nutrition Science or a Master of Science in Nutrition.
And especially because she's putting research papers on there. People are aware now that there's a lot of nutrition misinformation, so people are demanding resources. I mean, there are some people that are at least demanding references and resources that are credible. So then when you see someone kind of showing these references, it's like, oh, like it's a little bit more, it's a lot more compelling for even the people that might be a more vigilant. So what can people do if they're concerned about their inflammation levels? Again, I feel like we are a broken record at this point. Ultimately, it does come down to overall dietary pattern. And we've kind of highlighted some of those key components already over the course of the video. Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, minimizing things like red meat, prioritizing omega-3 rich foods, and minimizing ultra-processed foods. All of these things can be helpful. Research actually shows that the Mediterranean diet, which has been so extensively studied, does seem to be associated with reduced risk for inflammation. And this dietary pattern is really high in unprocessed grains, fruits, vegetables, olive oil, and nuts and seeds, and include moderate amounts of dairy, fish, and meat.
All that is to say is that what is generally good for health is also generally good for inflammation. It's not that complicated. Like, it's complicated to actually do. It's complicated. But like, all these internet gurus are like, this is the specific thing you need to do. It's not, that's not it. So listen to us as internet gurus instead.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
Thanks for watching. Bye.